Hello there guys, how are all of you doing? Welcome as always back to Rule of Two Review. Today, we're going to discuss two of my favorite franchises, The Legend of Zelda and Metroid. So the genesis of this conversation and topic within my own brain comes from a few different places. The main thing is really just my own thinking about the future of my favorite series, The Legend of Zelda, which of course just had like the greatest game ever just released with Breath of the Wild, and then of course Metroid, my favorite all-time series, and where that series may be going in the future. We haven't heard from Metroid in a while. Yes, we had Federation Force on the 3DS, and no, I don't hate that game. There's actually a lot that I enjoy about it, but it's obviously not the true console next generation experience of a Metroid game that we've all truly been waiting for. And beyond just my own thoughts and theories as a fan of these franchises and as Nintendo as a company, also in a lot of the comments of the videos that I've been posting over this last, many weeks since the Switch launched, and whenever I had a reason to talk about any sort of Nintendo game or Breath of the Wild or my theories about Metroid, and the fact that I absolutely do believe that Nintendo is working currently right here and now on a brand new Metroid game for the Nintendo Switch, mind you. And through that, a lot of the comments and a lot of the people start to mention to me through, even on Twitter and stuff actually as well, that, oh, I really hope that Nintendo is just going to do a Breath of the Wild to the next Metroid game. Now, that's an interesting idea when you first hear about that. Nintendo doing to Metroid what they did to Breath of the Wild. Or Nintendo, as a lot of people have phrased it, doing a Breath of the Wild to Metroid. And it sounds good at first. Actually, there's a lot about that I like, and I think that people, when they say that, and even when I've thought about it myself, people think, oh, they created this whole brand new way to experience an open world sandbox adventure, and this whole way to interact with it, and the graphic style and the engine is so fantastic, and it was such a change and a departure in a good way to the previous games in the Zelda series in that respective franchise, that they should do this exact same carbon copy thing to Metroid. We haven't heard from Metroid in going on 7 years now since 2010 when Other M came out. And as I mentioned recently, as much as I love Other M, a lot of people don't, so those people have truly even been waiting longer. And so what's going to happen with this next Metroid? I think that if Nintendo's willing to do to Zelda what they did with Breath of the Wild, why wouldn't they do the same thing to Metroid? And there's a lot of that I like, and there's also a lot of that I don't like. And so that's the real tricky thing here, and what I want to discuss with you guys about this concept and this idea of taking the Breath of the Wild formula and just applying it, slapping it right onto the Metroid franchise and the Metroid name, and how there are ways where I think that could work and ways where I think that won't work. Here are the reasons why I don't think it's actually a good idea, and I don't want Nintendo to do what a lot of people are suggesting or thinking, to just throw the Breath of the Wild thing onto Metroid. And it's like, I get it, you guys. Breath of the Wild is brand new, and it is the most incredible experience in gaming most of us have ever had. Probably me. I don't know if I can yet say it's my favorite game of all time, but it damn sure is in the conversation of the top 2 or 3. And yes, it's great, and it's exciting, and it's the new Zeitgeist title and the Zeitgeist formula for a game that Nintendo has given us, but that doesn't mean that all of a sudden it has to become the standard of everything that they would ever do, especially throwing it on to one of their most storied franchises, and a franchise that has a kind of rocky past. I mean, the most 2 recent games, Other M and Federation Force, were very divisive and very controversial. And for reasons I understand, even though I like them in different ways and for different reasons. We can't just say that that's the way Nintendo needs to bring it back exactly. Because I think that when a lot of people, Nintendo fans, maybe even some of the younger guys out there too, get so excited to say, oh, take Breath of the Wild, do that for Metroid, done, it'll be great. I think that what people are thinking is to make Metroid exactly that. And everyone wants exactly the open world sandbox experience. I had people talking about giving me different planets and make it, 100 times the size of the Breath of the World map and do all these things only for Metroid. And it's like, I have to say that there is a world where an open world sandbox Metroid game absolutely could work and could be perfect, and I would love to see Nintendo try to do that, absolutely. But to do exactly what Breath of the Wild is for Metroid wouldn't necessarily work that way, you guys. I think that we have to remember a lot of what Metroid is built on things that aren't anywhere near what Zelda is. And when we look at how different Breath of the Wild is to previous Zelda games, we also have to look at all of the ways that it's actually similar to previous Zelda games. That would be a whole different conversation I don't want to get into, but anyone who's been playing, especially the 3D Zeldas for any length of time, knows what I'm talking about. You can see the things that are still rooted in the traditional Zelda gameplay and formula that are present. Yes, it's a huge change, but there are still enough things to still make it look and feel and sound like a Zelda game. and you can't take that exact same kind of thing and just throw it onto a Metroid game. There are so many things that I think Metroid needs to still continue to do, just like Zelda is still doing some of the same things, only with a new formula. Metroid, if it was going to change significantly, I think would need to have the same thing, where there's a lot of staples and original concepts and ideas that make up the Samus character and the Metroid universe and the Metroid gameplay style that would have to still be present, even in a radically different departure from that game, to make it actually work and be good. In fact, that is the reason why, despite so many reasons why I should hate Federation Force, the reasons that I don't hate it and the things I gravitate to that I still do like are all of these tiny little things and small elements within that game that still feel like at least a Metroid Prime experience. Some of the other Metroid games we've had in the past that are great, those things aren't there. But when you just look at the Prime trilogy, there's a lot of great things from those games that are actually incorporated into Federation Force. Most people didn't play that game and give it a shot to really discover that, but I'm telling you, as a Metroid superfan and somebody who owned and played all the way to completion Federation Force, it's there. And it helped me enjoy that game. And so, if we do too much of the Breath of the Wild thing to Metroid, it's not going to be Metroid anymore, you guys. And I don't think that Nintendo wants to do that. And I don't think any of us, or even any of you guys, truly want Metroid to change in that way. Also, some people talk about taking the engine to Breath of the Wild and making a Metroid game in that. Now, as you know, I don't know the specs and the technical applications of a lot of what it means to create a game and code a game and do all these different things. So I can't say with 100% certainty, but I do feel pretty good in saying that making that exact engine work for Metroid might not work the way you want. It actually might work incredibly, for sure. I mean, you know, I don't have all the answers, so maybe I would be wrong here and there would be a way where that engine would work great for a Metroid game. But when I look at at Breath of the Wild and I play through that game and I enjoy the great landscapes and the scenery and the combat and the music and everything that makes it great in terms of what the engine plays like, it's so wonderful and absolutely pitch perfect for Zelda. But I don't know that I would really experience a Metroid game in the same way. I feel like it might clash. I think that really the Prime engine was such a great way to show how you could take a game that was previously a certain way and make it different but the same with a different engine. I think that engine worked perfect for Metroid specifically at the time that was first coming out in 2002 for the first Metroid Prime. And I think that if they were going to, again, take another radical departure and do something different we haven't seen, I don't think that it needs that Breath of the Wild engine. I think it would need another brand new proprietary engine that works with the kind of gameplay and scenery that we would be accustomed to in Metroid. I mean, Metroid is a long-distance missile projectile shooting sort of game, and a different sort of way that you organically connect with the world, and the worlds are also going to look and play different because you're in space and you're on who knows what kinds of different atmospheres and planets and doing different things that you wouldn't do in Breath of the Wild. The Metroid games might play so differently that might not work. But again, I could be wrong. Maybe it would work perfectly. I just know that when I first think about Nintendo doing Breath of the Wild things to Metroid and taking that engine and putting a Metroid game in it, it doesn't, you know, immediately jump out at me as the best way to go about it. But let's bring this back and talk about why it would be a good idea and how I want to see Nintendo do a Breath of the Wild to Metroid. It's not in the way a lot of people have talked about on, you know, YouTube comments and on Twitter to me and to other people. It's not take the exact gameplay formula of Breath of the Wild and make a Metroid game in it. It's not take the exact same engine from Breath of the Wild and make a Metroid game in it. To me, I want the Nintendo that created an experience as mind-blowing and perfect as Breath of the Wild and do that thing to Metroid. I want the thematic elements of how Zelda changed and evolved into this incredible Breath of the Wild game to transfer over to Metroid. So I want Nintendo to take all of the best things that they've learned from the 2D Metroid games, from the first-person Prime games, from Other M, which I think there's so much good in terms of gameplay and visuals from Other M. Take all of the things they learned there and evolve Metroid into this unbelievable, never-before-seen or experienced Metroid experience like they did with Breath of the Wild. I want that specific Nintendo to take their ideals and their confidence and their willingness to just change the game in the best way possible and apply that to Metroid. Because I think that that's what they did to Breath of the Wild. They were a risk-taking Nintendo. They were a no-messing-around to the wall Nintendo. And that's what made Breath of the Wild so good, and I want them to take that same mentality and that same ideology and apply it to Metroid. That's the Breath of the Wild experience that I want tacked onto Metroid. Not make it like Breath of the Wild only with Samus. That's not how you make good games. That's not how you make a good Metroid game, you guys. It's just not. And if Nintendo does that, which I think they are, we are going to be so blown away and so impressed and so happy, you guys. I think that we really would do well to just, sit back, give Nintendo time, have confidence in them. They're showing us great things with the Switch, with Breath of the Wild, with Mario Odyssey, with Xenoblade 2, with them working really hard to get indies and third parties back on board, and slowly but surely it seems like it might be improving. Let's give them time to show us they're going to be doing the same thing to Metroid. I believe in Nintendo. I believe in Metroid. I haven't been let down yet. I've been close. Federation Force was close, but I found enough good to still really enjoy that game in a lot of ways. And I think that Nintendo can continue to move forward and give us the Metroid that we want. And like I said in wrapping this up, it's not to make a clone of Breath of the Wild. That does not make good video games. You have to make every game perfect for what it's supposed to be, and you want as much individuality and identity as possible. You don't want anything to be the same as anything else. That's just, I mean, we live in an industry where we're always, dissing the fact that Assassin's Creeds and Call of Duties come out all the time, and they're not that different. And sometimes that works for a game, but you don't want everything to be the same as everything else. You want something unique and new, and that's not Nintendo. Nintendo is always trying to change the game. They're always doing something different, so they don't want to do exactly what they just did all over again for a whole nother series. That's not fun. That's not good for anybody. So, in wrapping this up, that's what I want to see happen with Metroid. Don't clone Breath of the Wild. Take the ideals and the themes of Breath of the Wild and make a Metroid game that way. And it's going to be amazing. And like I said, there's a tiny possibility we see Metroid announced next month at E3. But more realistically, probably next year. I'm going to go with 2018 E3 for now. But hey, we'll see. Nintendo, man, you never know what they're going to do next. So that's what I think about Breath of the Wild, Zelda, Metroid, Samus, my favorite game series of all time. What do you guys think about this? Does this make sense the way I laid this out? Or do you think that you just do want Metroid, the next Metroid, to be a clone of Breath of the Wild? I mean, if that's interesting to you, then hey, to each their own, and discuss why you feel that way below. So that's it for now, guys. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in. This is Rob of BotW Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.